Another episode of the Prep Coach podcast, and we have MG back. How's everything going, brother? I know you showed us your knee before. I don't know if you want to give everyone a bit of a look at what it looks like if they're watching on the screen. If you want to show us.
I can do that. Good to be back. Actually, this will be the last potty for the year, right?
That's right.
Yeah, perfect being here. So for anyone I'm working off my phone today, but not sure if it's going to be the best view for those watching on YouTube, but you can see pretty purple and nasty today. A couple of incision sites, a little bit swollen, but it's actually probably a little bit worse today than it was yesterday. I've definitely recovered from this one. Let's just say faster, less swelling post-op, less bruising, range of motion better. But I think now that I'm sort of getting back to some, what's it called, normality, back at work. Yesterday I did, a lot more steps than I'd done in the last week. There seems to be a little bit more inflammation around today. But I have to say, for the most part, man, it's been a pretty big success. Did you guys see the story I posted on my page of the photo of the ripped meniscus?
Yeah, like real quick, but can you explain what we're looking at?
Yeah, so basically just, the sheet of cartilage that sits kind of between the bone, which is, like a nice round soft disc that protects, has basically, this was on the medial side, has been ripped away. I've already had that same procedure done on the lateral side prior, it's actually post my 3 ACLs. So we're getting to a point now where, 2 meniscal repairs, they obviously shave it away. There's a little tool, and you can actually watch the surgery, but they go in there with this little tool, and it looks like, it's like a mixture between like an electric toothbrush and a hair shaver, and they basically go in there and it just kind of shaves away or eats away the bits that are ripped off and removes and sucks out all the debris. And then they do, I think, some steroid injection in there for healing, and you're kind of left with a cleaner surface area, but you're still missing parts of that cartilage. So I think there's no doubt that there'll be, a replacement in the near future. There was also quite a bit of, I showed you MT before, but if you look where the tip of the 2 bones are, you'll notice that there's some surface damage and what looks to be like blackening, or it's actually just bone bruising. So you boys remember how I was complaining about it always giving way? In fact, a couple of NBA shows that I emceed, it gave out on stage when I was side stage if I twisted too quickly. And what actually happens is those 2 bones, if you think about your shin and your femur or your quad, as I rotated, there's nothing there to stabilize, so they knock on each other, and you can see a lot of that damage on the surface of the bone. And of course, healing that area is a lot more difficult. So I'm glad I had it. I already feel like there's more stability. I think a lot of the instability at the moment sits in my head because I'm nervous around it, and I'm still being very cautious about twisting or turning. And it's still very early days. We're literally 1 week today, but positive procedure, all went well. Man, I went in for the pre-admission, and they gave me an intravenous injection, which they give you pre the actual anesthetic. I don't know if this is a trick, but to calm you. And I didn't even make it I wasn't even awake to see the surgeon or for the getting put to sleep part. I was asleep before that, and I woke up, the surgery was done. I literally walked out of hospital and never even got to speak to the surgeon once.
Wow. They're probably thinking, this guy's a new dad, he probably needs a good nap. They knocked him out
So,
quick.
Normally they'll do something like that, and then you go in and you still get that count back from 10 or something like that, but I never even made it to that part.
That's crazy. So it sounds like they've actually taken cartilage away, like they've cleaned it up, and they've actually, so you got less cartilage now, is that right?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's the thing, man. It's it's obviously better for it to be clean and tidy.
Yeah.
But at some point, not having enough cartilage will become a problem as well. And that's just wear and tear.
Yeah. So what surgery number is that on that knee?
5. That's 5.
It's a lot. And then obviously you'll eventually have to get a replacement. That'll be 6.
For sure. Yeah.
Wow. How many have you had on the other knee?
1.
Okay, cool. That's the good knee.
Yeah.
It's probably going to eventually be strong. Like this one that's got 5 and then may have the replacement will eventually be stronger than the other one.
Man, like having spoken to a lot of, people that train at my gym, and even, recently just my mum having her hip replacement and seeing her recovery, and, he's not the most active person and has never really, done a lot in terms of muscle strengthening or muscle building. And her recovery has been phenomenal. So I'm not too concerned about that being, what's in my future, just because of seeing what other people have had and how much it's helped them with their quality of life. Equally, I'm certainly not in a rush to get there either. But yeah, I'm not too stressed about it.
Yeah, my dad had a knee replacement last year. He's in his 70s now, but he does not freaking stop.
Yeah, but your dad's a bull, man.
He's a bull. Yeah, of course he is. But but yeah, he recovered real quick and probably was doing things he shouldn't have been doing sooner than what he should have been doing them. And he was perfectly fine. So if you get it done at a younger age than he has, then you'll be fine.
Man, the one thing that I love is because we've got so many great listeners of this podcast, so many of our listeners have got knee issues. And I've had just so many great conversations with, people that follow us about dodgy knees in the last sort of 7 to 10 days. It's been hilarious.
Yeah. It's it really goes to show you, and you never take for granted having a healthy body, right? Healthy joints and bones and muscles. And like, if we can tell anything to the young kids out there that are lifting and doing things, is just take care of your body as you move through your lifting career, because it makes a big difference when you get kind of to our age, when you start to get some niggles, looking at knee replacements, those kind of things. Makes a big difference. Scotty, have you ever had an injury, like something big?
Touch wood, no, nothing. My knees, I mean, a bit of wear and tear. Like you get it a little bit sore through the knees sometimes, just probably wear and tear and cartilage. But other than a badly broken wrist when I was a bit younger, I've been pretty fortunate.
Lucky, stayed out of the surgery. That's good.
Yeah, man.
All right. Let's jump into some questions. If you're ready for it, MG, I know it's been a little bit of time. We missed out on the last one. But the first question, not the first question, but the most recent question that we got was about the new news with IFBB and the Fit Model division they just introduced. Literally, as soon as that video went up, that question came through anonymously straight away. I think maybe they knew that we're going to record the potty today. So did you see the announcement? What are your first reactions? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, I watched it all, watched the whole video. Interesting to watch how Tyler kind of presented it as well. I thought he did a really, really good job. For me, it was straight to the comment section to see what was the feedback from all the IFBB pros out there. And I think it was a mixture of relentless support, and I think a lot of people are wise to jump in and support a federation that you're a pro in. And then there was a combination of those who were just like, I just don't feel like this is where our sport should be headed. I think if, you look at the reasoning behind the decision, it makes a lot of sense to me. You want to open the sport up to a wider range of athletes who potentially don't maybe have to push pharmacology as hard and spend as much time or as many years in the sport to still be part of the sport. So I like it from that aspect. And if you look at their history, back in the, middle teens, these types of physique were probably more prominent then. And they had a lot of competitors, but they equally didn't have as many divisions back then. So that kind of skews the data a little bit. I think anything that opens the sport up to allowing more people to compete is a positive thing, as long as it's in line with, what the true vision of the sport is. And I think for this, we are a muscle sport. And I think a lot of the criteria was down talking level of muscularity and down talking condition and down talking shape. We don't want to see round shoulders. If you don't want to see round shoulders, what do you want to see? Flat shoulders? So I think for me, I'm not a big fan of it. I think they could have got it right with a little bit more time and attention on their criteria. I think the way that they've pitched it in terms of what they're looking for, to me, doesn't sound like you're encouraging athletes to want to spend time growing and actually improving. You could literally do this division if you woke up and had the right shape.
Yeah,
and that's not bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is training your ass off, dieting, sacrificing, grinding. You could do this division without having to do that if you had the right shape. And you couldn't do any other division in IFBB just by having shape.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from, and I kind of had that first initial thought too. I was like, "Oh, this is a big move for IFBB to put in a division that doesn't have a lot of development, doesn't have a lot of conditioning." I was like, "That doesn't sound like an IFBB thing to do." When you think about IFBB, you think of the best physiques, the biggest, the leanest, the most muscular people, and then that division there with the criteria that they've set, I'm like, "Oh, that's not an IFBB thing that I see." But then when he started to explain it, and it started to make sense, like, yeah, okay, if it's more entry level and that's what you're saying it is, it's to get more people involved in the sport, then all three of us are definitely on board with that. We're all about getting more people in the sport, fit and healthy, getting competing. And if that's going to be an easy one to enter into, and then you move into bikini and so on and so forth, and that's really, really good. But yeah, my first thing was like, who's going to reach out to me and be like, "Michael, can I do that division? What do you think?" And I'm trying to see where it fits within the natty feds and the natty divisions. I think it's perfect for natties, to be honest, because to obtain that physique, you can definitely do that natural. I actually think there's probably already some people that have way surpassed it, that couldn't even, that wouldn't be able to go into it, wouldn't qualify for it. So I think it's going to be good for all the natty competitors for sure. I think, and this is without seeing it yet, but I think it's probably sitting in between an NBA bikini and an ICN bikini. It's because NBA bikini is pretty lean and has glute ham tie-ins and has round shoulders, and they said we don't want any of that. So it's got to be less than that. And ICN bikini kind of has some of that. So I think it kind of sits between the two, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give anyone advice, or if anyone in my team or anyone reached out to us and said, what do you think? What do I need to shoot for? What do I need to look for? That's where I'd kind of be looking at, what a top-end NBA bikini physique looks like, top-end ICN. It's going to sit somewhere in the middle there. What's going to be interesting, if my next thought is, if this going into 2025, and he said worldwide, are they going to put in Australia? The answer should be yes, right? Are they going to do it in the natty natty side of IFBB? You would hope so. Are they going to do it across all the other seasons they're doing with the untested ones they always do? I'd hope so. The next thing I thought about is there going to be pro cards? And it sounds like in 2026, they are going to have it in the Olympia. So there will be pro qualifiers and pro cards given out. So it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves in Australia next year. And then my thought went, are the judges going to know how to judge in Australia? Are they going to get a representative from the USA to make sure all the judges are aligned? Like, that's where this is my federation head talking right now, is how they're going to make sure they roll this out, worldwide. Can we get that consistency? Do we know what the look's going to be like? Are we going to be able to train people correctly? We're going to make sure that, it's consistent, so that when we do send people to Olympia, pro qualifiers, things like that, what look do we get? And also too is, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what let's call it the unnatty coaches, they're going to be putting a lot of competitors in it, because you would think that you wouldn't have to be enhanced to go into that division. So who are the majority of the coaches they're going to be playing within that space, and the majority of the competitors are going to be playing within that space? It's going to be really, really interesting. Yeah. What do you think, Scotty? First thoughts about it all?
I didn't watch the whole clip. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I did see what you had mentioned when you put it in our group chat. And yeah, I think it's been pretty strategically placed in that it is probably directed more so towards the natties. I think it's a smart move. They're trying to grow their natural federation. I think they've been pretty transparent about that. I think this kind of offers a nice little segue or pathway to being able to still do an enhanced show, but perhaps not really needing to be at a certain level of muscularity and conditioning. So it definitely opens that door to, as you said, that sort of entry level bikini, with NBA/ICN, a blend in between. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
One thing they also did was they said no crossovers. So you can't do that division plus bikini. You've got to pick that only, which I think is a great move, because then you're going to have people that are going to try their hand in both, and you're going to get a mixed match of physiques, and then the judges are going to have to try to make a call of what are we actually looking for. So I think it's good. I think also too in IFBB, you've got these natty girls that want to do IFBB bikini, but they're just not that developed or that conditioned yet. So I think that you might see some people that have done IFBB bikini that might step back and come down and give that a go instead to be like, I might be more competitive here. So I think we might see also that happen too, where, you know, some girls that are trying to do IFBB bikini might step down into there and then use that as a stepping stone on the way back up. So again, watch this space. It's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, we should see what happens.
All right, let's move into some other questions. There's some supplement ones there for you, Scotty, but I'm going to leave them to a little bit later, get people to hang on a bit. Let's go down here and talk about ones that have a little bit more context to them. So this one here, it says, hi, I got a question for you. I'm planning to compete next year. I understand that bridging between season B, the mid-year, and season C, it can work really, really well. And you mentioned on your last podcast, but what if you're competing back-to-back for 4 consecutive weeks? Is that possible? Can you do that? Should I only do, shows that are more separated? Should I do them closer together? What's the best way to tackle this? So maybe, Scotty, you might want to kick it off. You know, have you had people that have done 4 shows in a row, week after week? Is it something that's possible? Is it detrimental? Can it be achieved? Or would you rather a break between the shows, like maybe a week or 2 break between the shows?
I don't really think it matters, to be honest. I think a lot of people probably fear back-to-back weeks because, oh my God, how am I going to wash off, peaking and then resetting and going again? As a coach, I find it a lot easier. I think sometimes, there's a caveat to that where if you've got like 4 peak weeks in a row, sometimes it's nice to have like a week gap where you can really wash it off and even just have a break from all of the stress of like, if you're a female, you got to get the hair done, they do all of the lady stuff that needs to get done. And there's all of the pressure around that. And equally, sometimes I think as an athlete as well, knowing that you lose the ability to just really train fucking hard like you usually would when you're in prep because you are trying to manage the inflammatory response from training. So, I guess there's always exceptions to the rule, but in terms of if it's problematic, I don't think it's problematic at all. I think it's easier, and as an athlete, it's more enjoyable knowing that, oh, it's sweet, peak week, next peak week, next peak week. It goes a lot more fluently. It's just, I guess, if you're not ready in time, then it definitely puts a bit more stress on you to then have to try and chase your ass earlier in the week, and maybe you're not able to peak until the last couple of shows because you're focusing on actually getting leaner. But that obviously, if you rewind, comes down to being organized and being ready early. But yeah, as far as blending them together and running back-to-back peak weeks, I don't think it's an issue at all. I think most coaches in today's practice, and I think most athletes probably enjoy it. What do you guys think?
What do you think, MG? Do you think also too there's got to be an element of you probably need to make sure you're ready for show 1?
For sure. That's literally what I was going to say, man. It depends on really how you set your season up. And I'll use like an athlete from last season for me. Like if you look at Chloe's season, we knew that we were going to do that first NBA show, which was really early on. And the show that we wanted to be the best for was ultimately for us when the most was on the line, right? When it was a national or a world show and there was a pro card. So we weren't planning to be 100% for show 1. And again, it's just going to depend on whether you need to continue to progress towards something within that 4-week period that needs more time. And what I mean by that is if you get to show 1 and your feedback is that you need to be leaner, is peaking another 2 weeks in a row going to yield you the best result for the 4th show? And then it's like, is it maybe worth sitting down and saying, hey, if we could get maybe 1 or 2 kilos leaner, we're probably going to be pushing more for that top prize. Maybe let's not do show 2 and 3. Let's really dig for 2 weeks and try and come in 100% for show 4. But if you're ready for show 1 and all 4 shows, are worthy of you doing as a coach, personally, I like to peak weeks in a row. Yeah, I find it easier to manage. It's pretty easy to rinse someone out and get back to a baseline pretty quickly. And then to start that top up again is easy. And typically what you get is a more refreshed athlete because you're doing GTS sessions. So your training intensity overall is reduced. And by the time you get to show 2 or show 3, you actually have, an athlete that's, back feeling a little bit better and enjoying the process again.
Yeah, definitely. The only thing I'll add to that is you just have to be super organized. Like when you're doing back-to-back weeks, you just got to be really, really organized with everything that you're doing because as Scotty said, there's all these things that you need to do leading up to it, from appointments that are outside of you having to train and do cardio and meal prep, and making sure that you have everything lined up, where you need to be every single day. Also too is most people take some time off work, maybe a day or two before the show. So be prepared to maybe ask work that, hey, I've got to take the next 3-4 Fridays off, or maybe next 3 or 4 Mondays off, because every show is on a Sunday. So make sure that you're prepared in advance. But I think there's also a case too, what MG said is maybe be very, very selective on what shows you really, really, really want to do and what your end goal is. Like if your end goal is to just qualify so you can get to nationals, and you really just want to compete in, one federation is the one that you're really trying to shoot for, maybe not doing all the other shows for all the other feds, because that may muddy the waters a little bit. It may hinder you to make some progress if you need to make progress between shows. So yeah, maybe be very, very selective in what you do. But again, everyone competes for different reasons. Some people compete because they want to do multiple shows across multiple federations in multiple states, and that's what they want to do, and that's what they want to get out of their competitive season. Some people, like you said with Chloe, is she had a goal in mind. I want to go to nationals. I want to get my card, or whatever that may be. And it's like, for me to do that, it's just this show only, that show only, and that's it. I'm going to do my absolute best for those. So I think that's really, really awesome advice. On that, we had another question from someone else saying, first time competing was in season B24, so the most recent season. And I want to start a family in a couple of years' time. So I'm thinking of doing season A in 25 and then hanging up the heels. Do you think it's realistically possible to compete that close together? So they've just done a season and they want to do their next season coming up in season A.
Yeah.
What do you think, MG?
Man, all three of us for a long period of time have probably advocated, for the most part, and again, context is always specific, probably not doing back-to-back seasons if you're genuinely prioritizing making sure that you're improving every single time. However, in this instance, based on the circumstances, knowing that you do want to have a family, and as a recent dad, having a family, is the greatest thing that you could ever do, then, sure, you could make some improvements from season C now to season A. And if you're not, winning a pro card or making sure that you take out an overall isn't the highest thing on your priorities, but you want to compete one more time before having a child. In this instance, as a coach, I would say that would probably be a justifiable reason to go back-to-back seasons. You could still be very wise and strategic on how you periodize the time out between shows, have some time in a calorie surplus before you had to get back into prep. It would also depend on where you finished season B in terms of conditioning and what your reverse was like. But in this instance, man, I would probably support this athlete to do that, to finish off on a high note, hang the heels up and have a beautiful family.
100%. I think just also setting an expectation with them that, you're probably not going to make too much progress between these two seasons. So just so when you get to your next season, there might be a little bit of progress, but not a hell of a lot. And you're right. If you're trying to shoot for a top spot and you still got a fair way to go from a development or a conditioning perspective, you may not get there in one season.
And the other thing that I'd say as well is, being comp lean and getting pregnant typically don't go hand in hand at all. And you would be surprised sometimes how long the body may need. Again, everybody is different, but if I'm just generalizing, the body sometimes needs a hell of a lot of time in a really happy and healthy state with good energy availability before it would even consider allowing, pregnancy to happen. So I think for the most part, people probably need more time than they think to fall pregnant post being shredded. So that would be something that I'd be factoring in as well. If competing one more time was really, really important to you.
Yeah. Scotty, you got anything to add on that? Have you ever had a client that wanted to do another season because they have other life plans after that and it's like they're hanging up the heels or the trunks or whatever?
I'm sure I probably have. Off the top of my head, I can't think of it. But when you guys were speaking, the first thing that I was sort of thinking of was more also managing expectations in that post period without knowing. Did she say what division she competes in?
No, she didn't. No.
Yeah. So if you're a bikini competitor, I'd say there's no issues at all, because from a conditioning perspective, you don't have to get super, super lean. So you're probably not going to see that negative effect from, a prep related adaptation perspective, which means that sex hormone production would be all right. But if you're someone that's having to get pretty lean, then your recovery window is going to probably 2 or 3x. And that's where, when you're talking about wanting to have a family, it does take time. If you do a normal season, we're seeing more and more with case study research that anywhere from 4 months to a year before you get a regular menstrual cycle again. And just because you get a menstrual cycle doesn't necessarily mean that your body's going to say yes to, supporting a pregnancy and being able to sustain it. So I think from a sex hormone production perspective, you'd want to go on. If it was my athlete, I'd be asking them to go and get some bloods and have a look and see what they're doing, and letting them know that if your bloods are still not in a great spot, if estradiol levels are still very, very low, there's a good chance that until they start to come back, like, are you sure you want to do this? Because this could mean you want to start a family as soon as prep's done. You may not be able to conceive until like mid 2027. So they're the things that, like, say you had a figure competitor and she was like, I'm thinking about doing this. You need X amount of time to recover. Like, you've got to weigh up, do you want a baby more than you want to get back on stage one more time? Because if you really do want a baby in the next few years, then I would be like, it's probably not really worth the trade-off.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. Yeah.
And if you were doing it, and again, I've been pretty open with this, and I think eventually more and more people will probably start to get on board as research starts to roll out as we get more and more. But in that recovery window, regaining that fat mass back a little bit quicker to restore endocrinological function, I think is definitely going to sort of start to be the norm in terms of, again, getting things back to normal. So that if you do want to have a family, maybe as soon as you're done, it's like, I need to get back to being healthy, as in like regaining some essential fat mass a lot quicker than everyone else just taking their time and holding on to their look. But yeah, that's something that you would need to factor in. And again, it's always going to be dependent on the individual. There's some women that can do prep, come out, reverse recover, and then in like 5 months get pregnant. They're unicorns more often than not. But yeah, you just want to make sure that you're aware, and equally you've had that conversation with your partner too, because it's, if that was my wife that was doing that, I would want to, and I wasn't educated in this space, I would want to know everything and understanding it all, because having a baby is a big thing. But equally, when you're trying to have a baby, sometimes, and I'm sure I'm speaking to a lot of people that have had kids or maybe trying for, it's not as easy as everyone thinks. So that process of trying, and then if it doesn't happen, that can really start to take its toll, on an individual, but equally on a relationship as well. So I think sometimes you need to, look a bit further back and maybe just look at things from a wider scope, and then obviously make an educated decision.
Yeah, it's great advice. It's funny how things go full circle in a way. You spoke about, recovery and gaining weight a little bit faster. I remember back in the day, it used to be about just get back to your off-season weight as quick as possible. And it wasn't really a method to it, just people just eating whatever they wanted. And then we went all the way to the other end, was like reverse diet, super slow. You did a 6-month prep, should be 6 months until you get back to your off-season weight. And now we're moving back to kind of all where it started, obviously in a more controlled manner. But it's just funny how things go a little bit full circle sometimes within the bodybuilding space, for sure.
Yeah.
And I remember at my first ever show. Do you remember when I did that show with WFF? Like, well, it would have been like 7 or 8 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being backstage, and there was this massive bodybuilder guy, and I obviously was doing men's physique. And I remember talking to him backstage, and he's like, "Man, tomorrow I'll just go straight back to 7,000 calories." And I remember just being mind blown, like, "Whoa, I think MT's got me going from like 1,800 to 2,1," and he's like, "No, I'll go straight to 7,000 calories the next day. I'll put on." And I just remember being absolutely blown away by this guy. Like, he was obviously, 30 kilos heavier than me, but I remember, I think I might have even said to you, I was like, "Man, how's he able to do that?" Like, what?
And I think I said to you, it's not a good idea.
It's not a good idea. Oh, guys.
All right, next one. It's a little bit different, but it's about coaching. How do I bring up with my coach that I wasn't 100% happy with their service during comp prep, in the hopes to help future clients? I'm thinking about leaving them after my reverse is complete, as I didn't feel supported, but I want her to know how I feel. What do you think, MG?
Man, I've spoken to a few people lately who have, been in similar boats, and it's a tricky one to approach. But I think, just listing maybe in an email, which is probably more comfortable for you and probably more comfortable for the coach, and a lot easier for you to be able to, put your feelings in writing and not miss anything, but also the chance to be able to read over it before you send it, so that, if there's anything that you want to change, you can, because once you say something, you've said it forever. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest, putting an email and just making note of the things that, you thought would have been dealt with differently, or you thought that, could have been done a little bit better. Man, ultimately, it doesn't matter what job you do. We're all open for feedback and criticism. It doesn't matter where you work. And this industry is no different. I think for the most part, so many coaches get away with, a lot in terms of lack of providing services. And I've heard some horror stories recently that would absolutely blow your guys' mind. I'll just give you a couple of examples. Like I've spoken to athletes recently. No, seriously, I've spoken to some athletes recently who are competed in season B and haven't had a new program yet, but are still, and haven't had a check-in since comp.
Wow.
But still paying a weekly service. That's
crazy.
So if you're in a boat like that, there's, I'm not just talking about us three, there's hundreds of great coaches who provide really good and detailed services every week. And ultimately, I would be saying to myself, whatever your fee is, whether it's $60 or $150 a week, what are you providing me for that money? Is it worth it? Now, if you're paying a really, really low fee and getting a really, really low service, maybe that's something to look at. But I think to answer your question, I would be sending an email to the coach, listing all the things that you thought should have been dealt with better and just asking for a response. I don't think that's, you being in any way, shape or form rude. And sounds like it's probably time for you to move on.
Yeah, I love that you said, put in an email, write it down, make sure you go over it a couple of times so you know what you need to say. And also, too, it takes out the element of if someone is afraid to approach their coach and maybe they think they might not be, receptible to hearing that feedback, at least you can put it all out there instead of having to get on a call and then you don't really say what you want to say because you're too worried. I think that's a great idea to put it all down in writing and send it out. And the coach should be professional, take everything on board. They might have feedback too. And maybe they might explain themselves in a certain way that maybe might help with some of the points that you brought up. But I think laying it all out there, especially when this person said, I'm leaving anyways, but it's to actually help their current clients or their future clients. That's a really, really noble thing to say and want to do. But back to what you said about, someone not receiving a plan or any kind of check-in post-show, I would say everyone out there, you should be asking your coach, where is your reverse plan or recovery plan before your peak week even comes up? Because if you've done your show and you don't even know what you're doing after your show, it's too late. The coach should have given it to you before that. So I think going into your next season, whenever that may be next year, I'd be asking the coach, hey, when do I have my recovery plan, my reverse plan? I know we're moving into my show, it's peak week soon, but I want to know what I'm doing later. And that kind of puts you on the front foot and tells them what you're expecting from them. And then maybe even raise a red flag if they go, oh, I'll give it to you later. There's no later. Once the show's done, I need it right now. You're not going to give it to me on show day after I come off stage. It's too late, right? I haven't planned myself out. So I think that's really, really important. Anything you want to add on that, Scotty?
No, I think you guys covered it really well. I think when you have to have tough conversations. I'm very big on, again, I sort of similar, but I usually do a voice recording and then I'll sort of listen back to it and then be able, because sometimes when you if you said to someone, you want to have a tough conversation with someone, writing it down is definitely constructive. And that's where you want to get to when it comes to delivering it. But in terms of getting it in its rawest form, like I'm sure everyone's had moments where they're frustrated or they want to say fuck you or whatever it may be. But sometimes just literally use a voice record on your phone, say it all out, play it back, and then listen to what you're saying. And then as you're doing that, this is what I do. And then literally making notes on that. And then I would then take that and then put it in an email format so that you're literally, what do I want to say? If this person was in front of me, but I don't have to stress about them being there and being anxious or being interrupted. I just want to empty everything out, like just blurt it all out. And then obviously you can be more constructive. And I think as long as when you deliver the email saying that this is coming from a place of, constructive criticism, I wish you well. And I just want to let you know, so for future reference, you can reflect on this and hopefully render a better service. It's not coming from a place of saying you're shit and this is why, and now I'm leaving.
Yeah. And if the coach really, cares about their business, and you got a response like, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to send this. I've noted all your points and definitely can see where some of these might have arisen. my sincerest apologies, and it certainly will never happen again with anyone else. Wouldn't you just be like, oh, I'm really happy that I sent that, and like you'd still think highly of that coach.
Exactly.
And you would never go and say another bad word or anything like that. Not that you have any intentions to, but the whole end to that relationship would be so much nicer than the next time you compared and you ran into each other backstage. There wouldn't be that, that awkwardness because you've both dealt with it like professional adults.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, you're right, because they're going to walk away and someone's going to say, oh, you aren't with X coach anymore. Yeah, I'm not with them anymore. Decide to move on. But they're a great coach. They're great. Like, you're going to get a way better testimonial from them if you do it that way.
For sure, man.
All right, next one. Cardio sends the opposite signal to muscle building. So why do coaches prescribe such a high cardio in prep if it's not ideal to holding onto muscle? Tell us, Scotty.
Why do we do cardio in prep? Because it's a means of expending energy. Because resistance training is not energetically demanding, and performing aerobic or anaerobic exercise, depending on your cardiovascular modality, can be a lot more energetically expensive. And that is why we do it, to create more of a deficit. Sometimes you don't want to have to take from food because it affects perceived energy availability, potentially performance, recovery when we are in that suboptimal state. So a means of just creating some more expenditure rather than just running them into ground and getting to do 4-hour resistance training sessions. It's a better use of time. So that's why we prescribe it. I think the key is being aware of those cellular signaling responses and being specific around where you place it. And funny enough, I actually had one of my men's physique guys who's just wrapping up his pre-prep phase, and he was asking, can I just do my cardio straight after my workout just because it's quicker? And my response was no. And the reason being was because it does interfere with that signaling pathway, and it's better for you to do it on your rest days. And ideally even I get them to do it fasted, not because it's better, even though it is essentially better for burning fat, but that's not the main reason why, because we know that energy balance determines or it governs whether you gain or lose fat. It's more from an aerobic adaptation perspective. And this is something that I've been really big on, that training low is something that we do in professional sport to help enhance mitochondrial biogenesis. And so when you're in that position where you are in prep, for me, I'm thinking if I have the ability to be able to create more or bigger mitochondria, and again, being mindful that that is what produces ATP, and ATP is the body's energy currency, that is then going to help facilitate better cardio, potentially more expenditure, better resistance training, a fitter, stronger athlete. So if I'm going to get them to do that cardio anyway, I might as well I'll get them to do cardio low, recover low, and then feed carbohydrate later. And that's likely also allocating that carbohydrate closer to when that next resistance training session is going to be. So if I'm doing my cardio on a Thursday morning, I know my next resistance training session is going to be on a Friday morning, then perhaps if I'm to say meal one, I'm literally just having protein and some EAAs or something, and we know that that doesn't disrupt those signaling proteins. And then afterwards, I'm going to have a high protein, lower carbohydrate feeding. So I elongate that training low effect. And again, making the most of that signaling protein, PGC alpha. And so then I'll start to allocate my carbohydrate later in the day, which most people will be like, why would you have carbs later? Because that is closer to the window of when I'm going to train. So I'm restoring perhaps some muscle glycogen, I'm restoring liver glycogen, I'm fuller when I go to sleep, I wake up more rested, I'm having more carbohydrate the next day, and that then funds the next training session. So that's where substrate utilization for me, I think, even though we're in a world where to lose fat, you just have to create a calorie deficit. I think there are caveats to that where there's elements of minutia where you can be really intentional around where you allocate your substrate to yield a specific adaptation from a cellular signaling perspective.
So I think with this question too, they're kind of insinuating that cardio is not a muscle building activity. Is it a muscle losing activity? Is it going to degrade muscle?
Well, I would say if you're eating sufficient protein and you're getting sufficient sleep and you are disrupting homeostasis, so not even really, I think we're pretty clear now that you actually don't really need to do that much to retain muscle. Granted, that's based on being in a state of at least maintenance or isocaloric conditions. But if we're talking about when we're in a deficit, I think as long as you're providing an adequate insult to the body or a stimulus that disrupts, that lets us know that we still need, this fat-free mass. And like I said, you're consuming enough protein and that it's a complete protein source and you're getting sufficient sleep, then no, I don't think it's going to be negative. I think what's negative is if you get on stage and you're too fat.
There's the next.
No, but there's so many people now who are so focused on trying not to lose muscle and worrying about this and worrying about that, when in reality, you should be worrying about what happens if I step on stage and I am not conditioned enough for the specific requirements of my specific category. And that is going to be worse than you stressing about, oh, I might lose a little bit of muscle. We know that at some stage, you are going to lose some muscle throughout the prep. It's inevitable. Again, how much you lose is dependent on things like we're talking about. How much sleep do you get? How do you distribute your macronutrients? How hard do you train? All of those things are going to influence that. But you worrying about doing cardio, for me, shouldn't be at the top of the priority list. And in terms of degrading lean mass, like a lot of those people, I would say, cool, then what's your training like? Are you still training in close proximity to failure on at least 2 or 3 of your exercises in a session? Because if you're not, you should be more worried about that in terms of losing muscle rather than doing cardio on your rest days.
Definitely. It's a great point because you're right. There's going to be a point where you maybe might lose some muscle, but you'd rather that than not be conditioned enough for your division.
And again, you protect fat-free mass by doing those things. And again, this is where it blows my mind. There's people who worry about all of these what if, minor elements of minutia, but they're not grabbing the low-hanging fruit. You need to train hard, even when you're in a deficit. You need to fix, usually it's what's going on between your ears, because mentally, I'm a bit tired today, I'm eating less, so I'm going to train. I'm a bit tired and I'm eating less. Versus I'm going to train hard regardless. And then one of the biggest ones is just get sufficient sleep. If you want to get leaner and you want to retain muscle, then go to sleep. You're willing to stay up late and watch Netflix and get 6 hours and say blah, blah, blah. And again, I had an athlete yesterday saying, he's only works crazy. I'm getting 6.5 hours. I'm like, mate, I've got women and I've got men that have 2 kids that get 6.5 to 7 hours, and they have to go to bed late and they have to go to school and whatever. You're single and you live at home with your mum. Like, you don't have any excuse at all. You should be doing this. You should be executing, because if it's important, you'll make it happen. And if it's not, then you'll find an excuse. And it may sound really transparent and blunt, but equally, it is as simple as that.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. Anything you want to add to that, MG?
No, man. That is might be the greatest answer ever elicited on this podcast.
One of them, definitely, for sure. I'm gonna ask the next question, but I think we've already answered it. But I kind of group them together. Can you lose muscle from training too much? Athletes are doing strength training, running, HIIT, but they say they're recovering. Are they actually losing muscle? Is there a line that needs to be drawn? I think we kind of answered already with everything that you already said.
Yeah, all of those things that I just mentioned more or less underpin that, I think, because again, if you're getting sufficient sleep and if you're still seeing a rise in exercise performance in the gym, or at least the very bare minimum maintenance, then I would say most likely you're not. Again, if you're eating sufficient protein and all of those things that we just mentioned, then I don't think so. Because you only have to look at, like, you look at some of these CrossFitters, you look at the top level CrossFitters, and these guys train for like 6 hours a day. And, you know, their rhinoceroses run like 10 Ks without stopping, and they run those Ks at like sub 4 minute Ks. They can deadlift 2 to 3 times body weight. They can press overhead, you know, at least 1 to 1.5 their body weight. So they're freaks. But granted, they're still able to do that because they really prioritize fueling their body and getting sufficient sleep.
Yep, awesome. All right, let's wrap it up and move on to one last one. Actually, let's do 2 more. One is really, really important. What hair gel does Scotty use? It's amazing.
Are you taking the piss?
No, that's a fucking question. Maddie
That
Hatton.
is not a question.
Maddie Hatton. Of course, Maddie Hatton sent it out.
Oh my gosh, Maddie.
Is it New Wave? Did you ever have New Wave as a kid?
No, my wife's a hairdresser. If I use New Wave, she would kick me out of the house.
I'm just trying to think when I used to have hair. Well, I used to use, was it Rockstar? I think it was called Rockstar.
Rockstar, yeah.
Rockstar. Nah. So it's the brand is 11. So it's Joey Scandizo's brand. All of the ladies out there will know 11. It's more so in women, but they got a really good men's range, and it's just a clay paste.
Right? Can I just say your hair today looks extra fucking elite. I cannot stop staring at it. I don't get jealous often, but I'm feeling it right now.
And you just trained and probably had a full morning of running about, right? And your hair still looks great.
I feel like this is just give shit to Scotty Day.
I'm being serious. I'm not.
It's definitely not. All right, let's end it on that. We're going to do another one, but I think we're all good.
Maddie Hatton.
Matty Hatton.
It's,
Yeah.
Yeah, tell him I'll get Jen to send Rochelle a picture of what she needs to buy.
Yeah, done.
He's got a full head of hair, doesn't he?
Mate, he's looking very illustrious.
He is, and quite a robust individual, might I add.
He is. Season C next year. Keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, no, he did. I was talking to him in the DMs the other day. I said I heard you're going to be on in season C. I'm excited to see him up there.
That's awesome.
Sweet.
Can't wait. All right, Scotty, thanks for that. Maybe you should hold it in the thumbnail for next year. First episode.
You know what? I was going to say next week, but for next time, what I'll do is I'll actually bring it in and I'll hold it up as a prop.
And MT, do you want to just quickly before you go tell everyone about the meetup? Just one last
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, this Sunday at 10 a.m. on the 22nd of December is our podcast meetup at the gym, Powerhouse in Bayswater. Super excited to see everyone there. We've had a really, really good response of a lot of people coming, so it's going to be fun. If you want to train super hard and potentially vomit, make sure you hang around Scotty. If you want to do some rehab exercises, MG.
Yeah, if you got a bum knee, come and.
I was going to say, is it going to be hot on Sunday? I'm just checking the weather. I hope it's not 40 because
I think it's like 25 or something. It's pretty mild.
Perfect.
It'd be nice. But yeah, looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Awesome. All right, guys.
That's it. A year of potties done. We're done.
Yep. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you in 2025.
Yeah. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the new year.
Take care, everyone.
See you
Thanks.
guys.
Thanks for your work.